Welcome to Divine Intervention, 365 Days of World Building, and today is day 9, and we're going to talk a little more about Lunarium and the Astral Grift, as we've been calling it the last few days. So, as we talked about yesterday, one of the biggest things for the Lunarium project and the Pact of Awe was to gather Vesper Essence, but to utilize the different nations that actually worshipped it, because they were having troubles just studying it. And like they were able to utilize it, but they were not on the scale that they wanted to. On top of that, they were also severely lacking information on the other nations. And so one of the side projects of it was to gather as much information as they could. And what they kind of did was, as they started reaching out to these nations, they were really like tying very closely in with the Wanderers of the Unseen and listening to their stories and detailing like exactly what all these nations were. And all this information made up like what would end up being the Libraries of Lunarium. And what ended up happening was basically they collected all this information and they started saving everything, and they pieced together exactly how they thought they were going to be able to come through and actually convince the different nations to come. And what they were doing is they were figuring out the strengths and the weaknesses of the different nations, what they required, what they were lacking for supplies, things like that, and figuring out like how they worked. And they were piecing together like what they could offer to each other. One of the best examples of this is, like we said a couple times, the Hoarfrost Nation. They're really like self-reliant. And they're really not like fond of outsiders or even like each other. They like to just go off and do their own thing, and that's it. That's what like philosophy of Ajit's all about. But one of the things they really like is mead, and they're not able to produce it all year round up in the Winterlands. And one of the things that basically was the turning point in them agreeing to the pact was being able to have access to honey year-round through trade from Honeyloft, basically. And not only the Honeyloft honey, but the mead that the monks there make, too. And, like, that was a great selling point. And that was something that just came across from, like, word of mouth from Wanderers of Unseen that the Astral Nation had talked to. And so they were taking all this information, and they were just writing it all down and keeping it in the libraries. And on top of that, when they went and started doing the treaties and they had the nations come, a lot of the nations brought with them their lore keepers, their storytellers, their shamans, things like that, because of the scale and the importance of the event. And there was a certain sect of the Astral Nation that was specifically like secret traders, basically. Assassins, but they don't kill. They're just like these information rogues, and they were out hanging out with these groups and getting as much information on all the different nations as they could to help out with this power of information that the Astral Nation worships. And so we got right here is like just a little mock-up of a Astral Nation library with the purple Vesper cubes. A cool little bloom effect. Anyways, one of the other things I wanted to mention briefly was yesterday, if you notice at the bottom, I was talking about distances a little bit. And then I had to change it because I think I was incorrect during the video. So I wanted to change it after and make sure it was a note. But a lot of the distances and measurements in Divine Intervention will come down to like marching days. And there's all these marching days from like the past, like Roman days. They say it's like 18 miles or something like that. And you have different ones for like loaded and unloaded and like infantry. And just to keep everything simple, a basic day's march that I've been using as like a general rule is 10 miles. I figured that accounts for like different terrain, and on average that's what we're going to be using. The other thing that I'm trying to do, and I've been trying to edit it out, so if it happens to land in here, I'm trying not to use directionals like north, south, east, and west. And at some point we're going to have a map where, like, when we talk about that specific nation, they're always going to be north compared to everything else. So a lot of the directional verbiage that I'm trying to use is, you know, the Hoarfrost Nation on the Tribe of Valley border, or on the Everfolk border, or the Winterlands instead of the north, or the plains for the tribes. It probably happened because I'm just ingrained to directionals, and I'm sure everybody is, but it's just something to keep in mind, and I want to touch base on that since we started talking about measurements, but I didn't really just want to make a video on it today. So, all right, so I think that's going to take care of today. So join us tomorrow.